Welcome to the Survivor to Thriver show with your happiness expert, Samia Bano. Do you feel stuck, silent, and stressed? Is something hurting your heart and soul? Are you burning yourself out? If so, you are in the right place because this is the podcast people from all over the world join in to learn exactly how to stop suffering and start living with inner peace and joy. Let's get started. Yesterday, I made another claim to you. And in making that claim, I said, there is always a third way, a win-win solution to any problem such that allows you to address the problem and do so in a way that you are able to maintain your inner peace and joy, your sense of power and control over your own life. Even the possibility of these third ways existing, of these win-win solutions existing, for many of us, we cannot even imagine what these solutions might look like. They're not the normal way of how we think, or what we even may believe is possible. And I know for me, one of the things that really helped me to open my mind to these possibilities, to these ideas, was learning from the example of other people in situations where they found these third ways, these win-win solutions, and utilized them to great effect. So today I want to share with you some of these examples that I learned about. And the way I'm going to do it today is by actually reading to you some of the passages from a book called Jesus and Nonviolence, A Third Way by Walter Wink. I came across this book when I was taking a class in the history and philosophy of nonviolence in Santa Monica College with my professor, Christine Holmgren, one of the most brilliant professors that I've ever had the pleasure and privilege of studying with and under. So one thing that I really appreciate about this book is that Walter Wink addresses how these teachings of nonviolence, these third ways, can be utilized at both an interpersonal level as well as at a level of creating societal change, change in the systems, the oppressive systems of society. And he does so by examining the life and times of Jesus and his teachings. So I'm going to give you today some of the more interpersonal examples that we can look at from the life of Jesus in terms of his teachings about what these third ways can be like. So you may be familiar with this passage, if not in its entirety, at least in parts. It's from Matthew's chapter 5, verses 38 to 41. It says, "You have heard it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, give your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the second mile. Now, a lot of people in today's world look at these teachings and they think, oh, so Jesus is saying, just take it. If somebody hits you, if somebody oppresses you, if somebody acts unjustly towards you, just take it. He's telling you to be passive. And they dismiss his teachings. If they're committed to ending injustice, they'll dismiss these teachings as just, hey, it's just impractical idealism. You know, it suggests, they think, like this doormat quality that makes you actually complicit in the face of injustice because you don't resist it. You don't take action to change it. You know, resist not evil seems to break the back of all opposition to evil and to counsel submission. Going the second mile has become a platitude, meaning nothing more than extend yourself. And rather than fostering structural change, encourages collaboration with the oppressor. But the truth is that Jesus never behaved in any of these ways. So this is clearly a misunderstanding of what Jesus was saying. And as Walter Wink argues, this is a misunderstanding that is stemming from our lack of understanding of the context within which Jesus uttered these words, and our lack of understanding of the perspective of the people to whom Jesus was talking. See, as Walter Wink says, Jesus was no less committed to opposing evil than the anti-Roman resistance fighters. The only difference was over the means to be used, how one should fight evil. See, the problem is, or was, that human evolution has conditioned us for two main responses, two types of responses: fight or flight. And the people who chose the fight option, they were crushed mercilessly. It was not a good option. But the only other option that the people could see was submission. That was not a good option either. Because who wants to be humiliated, to live under oppression, to live under injustice, to be denied basic human dignity and respect and freedom? So this is like, you know, that kind of choice that we can feel stuck with between the rock and the hard place. Fight or take flight. Revolt or submit. Submission or revolt spelled out the entire vocabulary of the alternatives to oppression for the people at that time. But Jesus abhors both being passive and violence as a response to evil. What he offers is a third way that's not even touched by these two options of fight or flight. And Jesus clarifies, you see, what he means. And he even gives very practical suggestions to his people for how they can engage in this third way. He uses 3 brief examples, but right now we are going to focus on just the first one. If anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. Now, the question is, why the right cheek? How does one strike another on the right cheek anyway? Try it. a blow by the right fist in the right-handed world that it was would land on the left cheek of the opponent. To strike the right cheek with the fist would require using the left hand. But in a society of in the society at the time of Jesus, left hands were only used for unclean tasks. And even to gesture with the left hand could carry penalties of exclusion and days of penance. So the only way one could strike the right cheek with the right hand would be with the back of the right hand. So what we are dealing with here is unmistakably an insult, not a fist fight. The intention is not to injure, but to humiliate, to put someone in his or her place. Again, we need to understand the historical context within which these teachings were being communicated by Jesus. During those times, in that culture, one did not strike a peer with backhanded strikes. And if you did, then you could be fined heavily for giving a backhanded strike to somebody who was your equal. A backhand slap was the normal way of admonishing inferiors. This was something that masters did to their slaves, that husbands did to their wives, that parents did to their children, that men did to women, that Romans did to Jews. What we have here is a set of unequal relations, in each of which retaliation would be suicidal. So the only normal response then was cowering submission. So it is important to ask, right, again, who was Jesus' audience? In every case, Jesus' listeners are not those who strike or initiate lawsuits or impose forced labor. Jesus' listeners were the victims. If anyone strikes you, he said. If anyone would sue you, he said. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, he said. There are among his hearers people who were subjected to these very indignities, forced to stifle their inner outrage at the dehumanizing treatment that was meted out to them by their hierarchical system of caste and class, race and gender, age and status, and as a result of imperial occupation. So then why does Jesus counsel these already humiliated people to turn the other cheek? Because this action robs the oppressor of the power to humiliate. That's right, because turning the other cheek in the way that Jesus was teaching robs the oppressor of the power to humiliate. Why? How? Because the person who turns the other cheek is saying, in effect, try again. Your first blow failed to achieve its intended effect. I deny you the power to humiliate me. I'm a human being just like you. Your status does not alter that fact, and you cannot demean me. Such a response would create enormous difficulties for the striker. Purely logistically, what can he do? He cannot use the backhand again because his nose is in the way. He cannot use his left hand regardless. If he hits with a fist, he makes himself an equal, acknowledging the other as a peer. But the whole point of the back of the hand is to reinforce the caste system and its institutionalized inequality. Even if he orders the person flogged, the point has been irrevocably made. The oppressor has been forced against his will to regard the subordinate as an equal human being. The powerful person has been stripped of his power to dehumanize the other. This response, far from admonishing passivity or cowardice, is an act of defiance. Walter Wink similarly goes through an examination of the second example of if somebody sues you for your cloak or coat, give them your cloak as well. And he shows how, again, this is not a recommendation from Jesus to just be passive and take and submit to oppression. That in fact, this again was a way that he was showing his people, the oppressed, how they could stand up for themselves, stand up for their dignity, their rights, and expose the injustice of the system that they were being subjected to. And the same thing with the third example, where he recommended that, hey, if you get forced to walk a mile, walk the second mile as well. It's all about context. The context. See? So he was actually offering really practical, strategic measures for empowering the oppressed. These actions that Jesus recommended even provided a hint for how his people could take on an entire system that was so unjust and unmask its essential cruelty and just demolish its pretensions to justice and law and order. As Walter Wink points out, it is important for us to repeat such stories, to learn even more such stories, so that we can extend our imaginations for creative non-violence. Because this is not a natural response. So we need to be schooled in it. We need models, and we need to rehearse these strategies, these tactics, these kind of ideas in our daily lives if we ever hope to resort to it in crisis. Remember, turn the other cheek is not intended as a legal requirement to be applied wittingly in every situation. Rather, it's the encouragement for us to discover creative alternatives that transcend the only two alternatives that we are conditioned to perceive. That is submission or violence, fight or flight. Turning the other cheek, as Jesus taught it, is an act of defiance, an act of creative non-violence response, an act requiring great courage. If you are finding yourself in a situation right now where you're feeling out of control, where you're feeling a sense of powerlessness, and you want to learn from this example, from this teaching of turning the other cheek as Jesus taught it, ask yourself, what is the most creative, transformative response to the situation? Walter Wink again says that creative nonviolence can never be a genuinely moral response unless we are capable of first entertaining the possibility of violence and consciously saying no. Otherwise, our nonviolence may actually be a mask for our cowardice. Another point that Walter Wink makes, and I'm going to end with this thought for today, is that nonviolence is not the final objective. Nonviolence is a lifestyle. The final objective is humanity. It is life itself. Or to put it another way, you see, he says, violence is not an absolute evil to be avoided at all costs. It's not even the main problem, but only the presenting symptom of an unjust society. And peace is not the highest good. It is rather the outcome of a just social order. And we can say that, there's a similar argument that we can make when we're talking about inner peace. Inner peace is an outcome of our needs being met, of our acting and living in ways that are in alignment with our values, and in alignment with ways that are just and compassionate and kind and empathetic. It's so important to remember that. That peace is the outcome. That peace is the result of the kinds of actions that we take, of the kinds of thoughts that we think, and the kind of beliefs that we have. So if you're lacking inner peace or outer peace, the way to achieve this peace is by correcting, not focusing on the level of symptoms, is by correcting the root problems, the injustice or the negative thinking, the negative behaviors, and so on and so forth. So think about this. And as always, I invite you to connect with me if the ideas that I discussed with you today are something that you find challenging, or you find yourself being challenged in terms of how to apply these to your life, to your personal situation, then please don't struggle with that on your own. Connect with me and allow me to help you figure out how to apply this in your life. Go to my website at www.academyofthriving.com, and from our Contact Us page, you'll be able to see multiple options for how you can connect with me. And I do want to make a recommendation that if you're serious about engaging in a proper conversation with me on this and actually finding personalized solutions for you, it's not something that we can just do through casual messaging and things like that. So when you contact me, when you connect with me, ask me about how you can sign up for a complimentary inner peace strategy session with me. Because in the inner peace strategy sessions, the way I facilitate them and the process, the system that I've set up for it, it'll help you to gain complete clarity on what the problem is, the root cause of the problem is that you're struggling with, what the solution is. Solution not just general level, but solution that's specific to you, the best solution for you. So identify the problem, identify the solution, and even we managed to identify specific next steps that you can take to help yourself move forward in implementing that solution. All right, so we can do all of that in the context of a complimentary inner peace strategy session. So connect with me and ask me how you can enroll in a complimentary inner peace strategy session. So until next time, I wish you lots of peace and joy.